everyone, welcome back to my channel, Everlynn's Books and Tea. Today we are going to be playing our TBR game for the month of December to choose our December reads. I can't believe we're already at the end of 2023. We're about midway through November now. I've been doing pretty well with my TBR reads for November. I think I've read 3 or 4 books so far, and I have about 10 days left in the month. I've had to record this video a little bit early just because I have a lot of things going on at the end of the month. But I'm excited to see what we're going to get for the month of December. December is always a good month to read because that's when the weather starts getting really cold and you start spending a little bit more time indoors. And you can get your, if you have a fireplace in your house, you can get that going. So it's always kind of nice and cozy. So let's see what we can get on our December TBR and let's get going with the game. So we are still going to be using the autumn game board just because technically winter doesn't start till almost the end of December. And this way we get a couple of fall prompts from our seasonal prompts. And we'll also get some winter prompts if we happen to pull any prompts that have to do with the month of December. So for those who haven't seen me play this game, it's pretty easy. Basically, we're going to roll a die, go around the board, and then each color board corresponds with one of these bags up here. And each bag has different types of prompts in them. We'll choose a prompt. We'll choose both a physical book and a electronic book for each prompt. And we'll do 7 rolls and that's how it goes. So let's get started with our first roll and see what we land on. All right, so for our first roll, we get a 4, I believe. All right, so for our first roll, we got a 4. We landed on the color brown, which corresponds to our owl bag here, since the owl is brown. And this is the bag that has our seasonal prompts, our monthly prompts, and then our astrological sign prompts, which for the month of December is Sagittarius and Capricorn. So let's see what we get for our first prompt of this game. All right, so for our first prompt of the game, we have find a wintry base tale to read. So that's perfect for the month of December. So let's take a look at our physical books first and we'll see what we have. So for our first book, for our first prompt, which was choose a wintry book, we have The Bear and the Nightingale by Catherine Arden. So this book takes place in Russia. You can see that there's snow on the cover and a little cabin. So it's kind of like the perfect read for the month of December. I have read this before. It's been a while, but it's based on a Russian fairy tale and where winter lasts most of the year. So what could be more perfect than that? So we will put that on our board. It's the first book in a trilogy. I haven't read the rest of the trilogy, which is why I want to reread this book before I get to the rest of the trilogy. So we'll add The Bear and the Nightingale by Catherine Arden as our first physical book, and then we'll look through our choices on our electronic book board and see what we have over there. So there wasn't too many choices on our electronic book board. A lot of them actually had kind of summary fields, but I did find one that I guess will fit close enough for this TBR list, and that is Whiteout by Danielle Gerard. So this book is the first book in the Badlands Thriller series. This book starts off in North Dakota, where a woman survives a car accident on an icy road. So, icy road, winter. That's the connection that we're going with. Um, but when this woman, Lily, regains consciousness, she has no idea who she is. And then that same night, another woman ends up being murdered and tossed in a dumpster. And this little town's only detective soon discovers that there's a link between Lily and between the woman who was murdered. And so now the two kind of pair up to discover who Lily is and what she has to do with this other woman being murdered. So it's a thriller. So we'll add that. It takes place in North Dakota, which is very cold, so especially in the wintertime. So that's our wintry connection. So we have Whiteout by Danielle Gerard to add to our TBR list. All right, so it's time to do our second roll of the game. All right, so for our second roll, we get A 5. So 5 brings us to another brown circle. All right, so we landed on a brown circle again. So let's pull up our brown bag, which is right over here. And let's see what we get for our second roll of the game. All right, we got another prompt that has to do with the month of December. And it is read a retelling of a folklore. Well, the last book we picked would have also been perfect for this prompt, but let's see if we have another one that we can use. So I think I found two books that match this prompt. The first is Before the Devil Knows You're Here, and this is by Autumn Krause. This I actually got in the Strand Book Box, which is a quarterly subscription from the Strand Bookstore, which is in New York City. So this book is set in the US back in the 1800s. It follows a young woman named Catalina who's living with her father and her brother when one day her father grows ill and her brother is taken by this strange man, and all that's left after he takes him is this bird with crimson wings. And now she's made it her quest to go out and figure out what happened to him and to bring him back. So this is kind of based on like American tall tales. Um, so that's the folklore in it. The second book is A Curse So Dark and Lonely, which is by Brigid Kemmerer. This is a Beauty and the Beast retelling, and I did Google it. Beauty and Beast is considered a folklore, so this matches the plot well, or the prompt well. And when I bought this book, the person checking me out said that it was really good and that she really enjoyed reading it. And I feel like Beauty and the Beast just gives me wintry vibes. So is this cover. I don't know why. Probably the cover because there's no leaves, so it looks like it's set in winter. But it's actually set in the autumn time, but that's close enough to winter. And it's has kind of like these nice bigger words, a lot of white space on the pages. So even though it looks long, it should be a fairly quick read. So I'm going to add this to my December TBR. And now we'll take a look at our electronic books and see if we can find something to do with a folklore on there. So there wasn't a lot on the board that had anything to do with fairy tales or folklore. So we're kind of going to go with the book with the closest theme to it, which this book, I don't even know where I bought this book or where it came from. But at some point I probably got it for free from, the bookbub.com and everything. But basically this book is Minder. It's by Jennifer Kabe, and it's a dark fairy tale about young siblings who inherit an old trunk from their grandfather. But not when it's open, not everyone sees the same thing inside, so they kind of experience joy and terror in equal measure, learning the truth about the tooth fairy, invisible friends, and terrible things that befall children who go poking in places uninvited. So that's all the description that I have, but it does say a dark fairy tale, so therefore it's a retelling of some folklore, we're going to say, and this is the book we're going to go with, Minder by Jennifer Kabe. All right, so let's do our third roll of the game and see what we get. All right, so for our third roll, we rolled I have no idea what we rolled. We rolled a 1 and we landed on orange. All right, so for our third roll of the game, we landed on orange. That's this bag over here. Let's see, I forget which this bag has. Let's just grab one and all right, so this bag has prompts that have to do with the cover of the book. It also has some miscellaneous prompts and then some series prompts where I read the next book in in that series. So let's see what we get for our third prompt of the game. All right, so we got a miscellaneous prompt, which is a book I've had for a long time. So this should be pretty easy because a lot of these books I've had for many a year. So let's go through and see which books we want to choose from. All right, so I have two books I've had for a very long time. The first is The Eye of the World by Robert Jordan, which is the first book in the Wheel of Time series, which I still haven't read. So that's our option one. And then our second option is the Whitethorn Woods by Maeve Binchy. And this book I've had not only a long time, but I'm pretty sure I pull it up almost in every TBR video and end up not choosing it. So this time I am going to choose it. So this book takes place in Ireland, and it's about a town where a road's going to be built through, and the well that is very important to this town is slated for destruction, and now there are kind of two sides that this well should be destroyed to get this new road, or the well should be saved. And it kind of goes through that. So we'll see how it is. I love Mae Binchy's books. They're usually pretty good. This is one I haven't read yet, so I'm looking forward to seeing how it is. And we will add it to our list for December. All right, let's look over here and we'll see which books we've had a long time on this list. So I kind of know which book I was going to choose on my TBR board, or electronic TBR board, and that is Red Rising by Pierce Brown. This book has obviously become very popular. I bought it back when it first came out. It was on sale, I think, for like, bookbub.com or one of those types of websites. So I got it for pretty cheap, and then I never ended up reading it ever. And then when I got back into reading, especially recently, I've just heard so many good things about Red Rising. So it's made me want to read it. And I am going to add it to my TBR board, or TBR list, and see if I can get to it this month. But basically, it sounds like it's a science fiction book. I've heard references to the Hunger Game, but it follows a character who lives underneath the world and soon comes to realize that there's kind of a whole world outside what he knew and what he's been led to believe. So that is Red Rising by Pierce Brown. That will be our third book to our December TBR. All right, so it's time to get back to the board and roll our fourth roll of the game. All right, so for our fourth roll of the game, we roll a 5. And that again looks like it leads us to a orange circle. All right, so we landed on orange again. Luckily, I did not put the orange bag away. So let's look, or not, we're not going to look, but let's pull our next prompt of the game. And we got another miscellaneous prompt, and it says an author's debut novel. All right, so that's always fun to figure out. So let me take a look. I'll be back once I figure out if I have a author's debut novel on my list or on my shelf. I'll be back. We'll see. So I found two books that meet the prompt of a debut author. The first is The Nix, which has kind of an interesting premise and also would have fit in with our folklore books because it's based on the Norwegian folklore about nixes, which are these creatures that whisk children away on these white horses. But this book is actually about Samuel, who hasn't seen his mom in many decades, and his mom suddenly shows up at his door after committing an observed crime that has been all over the news. And now, to figure out why she did this and kind of to save her, he has to kind of journey down her life before she had him, which takes him to their origins in Norway. So that's the first option. And then the second option is The Gilded Cage, which is by Vic James, which is a fantasy book that takes place in a alternative England where aristocrats have magic and commoners must serve them for 10 years. And it follows Abby and her brother, who are commoners. One, Abby's a servant to England's most powerful family, and Abby's brother Luke is enslaved in a factory town. And after Luke finds something out, he is ready to start a revolution, basically. So that is kind of where this book goes. So those are our two options. The next book is super long. It's over 600, well, not super, but it is over 600 pages and very heavy. So I think I am going to go with The Gilded Cage, just being a December fantasy. So Norway is also kind of winter, but I'm gonna go with this book and save the Knicks for next year, 2024. Maybe I'll make it a January or February read because I definitely want to read it. It definitely has a interesting plot to it. All right, but let's turn to our electronic board and see if there's any books up there by that are debuts. There are several books that were actually debut novels up there, but the one I'm going to go with is The Glassblower, which is by Petra Dunst Benning. And this book takes place in a small village in Germany where things have been done the same way for centuries. The men blow the glass and the woman decorate and pack it. It follows three sisters, Joanna, Ruth, and Marie, whose father has just passed away. And to deal with that, they kind of take their own approach to fend for themselves, where Joanna looks for work, Ruth looks for a man to marry, and Marie looks at the craft of glass blowing to make her way in the world. So that's the book I'm going to go with, The Glass Blower. It seems like it should be a good book. I love reading books set in different countries, and it's been a while since I read one set in Germany. So the Glassblower by Petra Durst Benning will be our fourth book on our electronic book on our TBR list. All right, so let's do another spin. It'll be our fifth spin of the game. All right, so for our fifth spin, we roll an 8. That lands us on red. All right, so for our fifth spin, we rolled an 8. We landed on red, which is our pink bag right here. Let's put the orange one away. And this bag has, let's take a look, see what type of prompts this bag has. It has prompts that have to do with the title of the book, and also has some miscellaneous prompts and some prompts about of series. So let's see what we get for our fifth prompt of the game. All right, so we got a title prompt, and it is a book with a 5-word title. So let's see if I can count to the number 5. Last time I had a prompt like this, I totally miscounted, but we will try this again. So we need a book whose title is 5 words long, not syllables. We got this. So I found 2 books that match this prompt. They both have 5 words in the title. I have counted them twice, so I am almost 100% sure I've done this correctly this time. The first book is The Spirit Bears Its Teeth, which is by Andrew Joseph White. This is kind of like a fantasy gothic dark academia book that follows a 16-year-old boy, Silas, who's a transgender person. He lives in a world where females end up getting what's called veil sickness, which is a disease that sends them into madness. And to stop this, they are sent to Braxton's finishing school and sanatorium. So Silas ends up getting this disease. He's sent to this school where he starts seeing ghosts of missing students who kind of beg Silas for help. So now he's at this school where he doesn't belong, but he has found that he needs to see what happened to these missing students. So that's become his mission. So that's our first option. And then our second option is The Hand on the Wall, which is the third book in the Truly Devious series. I've read the first one. I'll finish the second one this month. And I definitely am excited to read the third one. So, for those who don't know, this is about Stevie Bell, who goes to this elite academy, which is up in, I think it's either New Hampshire or Vermont. I've already forgotten. But basically, a long time ago, there was a murder. Stevie is kind of a aficionado about true crime stuff, and so she's made it her goal to solve the murder. And this is, I think, the conclusion of what happened back then. We'll finally get the answer. So this is the book I am going to add to my TBR list. I'm actually saving The Spirit Bears Its Teeth for January. I'm going to do kind of like a dark academia read. So we are going to read this, but we will do that in the month of January. So we will add The Hand on the Wall by Maureen Johnson to our TBR list. So now we gotta look back here and see if we have any books that have 5 words in the title. All right, so I found one book on there that has 5 words in the title, and that is Lost Books and Old Bones by Paige Shelton. So this is a third book in the Cracked Spine series, which takes place in Scotland. It's kind of a cozy mystery series that follows a woman who moved from the U.S. to Scotland for a new job in Edinburgh, where she works at this bookshop that's owned by this very rich person. So they have a kind of like a lot of antiques, and she somehow keeps getting herself into situations where someone's been murdered, and she ends up helping to solve that crime. So this is the third book in the series. I'm going to choose this one because it's a cozy mystery, and We have a lot of kind of like fantasy books, and this one is these books are usually really quick reads as well, so I like to have those on my TBR list as needed. So, Lost Books and Old Bones by Paige Shelton will be our fifth book in our on our electronic TBR list. So let's do our sixth roll of the game and see what we get. All right, so for our sixth roll of the game, we roll a one again. So we landed on orange again. All right, so we rolled a one again. We landed on orange again. So let's grab that bag. We'll put the pink bag back, or the red bag, I guess I should say. And this is the bag that has our cover prompt. So let's see what we get for our sixth prompt of the game. All right, so we got a cover prompt this time. And our cover prompt is a cover with a magical creature. All right, let's see if we can find one of those. All right, so I found two books that have magical creatures on the cover. We have Touched by Magic, which has unicorns, and we have Song of Silver, Flame Like Night, which has a dragon. So obviously these are both fantasy books. They're also kind of very different books. This book was on my November TBR. I'm actually not going to get to it this month, though I do want to read it. But I think for December, I am going to go with Touched by Magic by Durana Durgan. This is a book I've read many a times. At one point, my dog even got to it and kind of tore off the cover. But it's a nice, easy, quick read. I will say that I enjoy the story. There's definitely some plot holes in it, but sometimes those stories where you read when you're younger just kind of grab you, and I definitely read this one when I was a little bit younger, and it's one book. It's a book that I go back to many a time. So I haven't read it this year yet, but I am going to add it to my December TBR to see if I get to it. So, Touched by Magic by Durana Durgan with unicorns on the cover, which is our magical creature. All right, now let's look over here and see which covers have magical creatures on them. Right, so I found one book that has a magical creature on the cover, and that's a griffin. And the book is called The Black Griffin, and it's by Mercedes Lackey and Larry Dixon. This is a book in Mercedes Lackey's Valdemar series, which is a very long series. I read a couple books in it and enjoyed it, but basically it centers around these people called heralds who have magic and are able to talk to these kind of like magical horses almost. So this book actually takes place before the organization of heralds. Um and I've wanted to go back through and kind of read these books kind of from beginning to end. So we'll see how that goes, but this will be kind of my first venture into doing that. So we will add The Black Griffin by Mercedes Lackey onto our TBR list. And now we are up to the last roll of the game. Let's see what we get for our seventh and last roll. And we landed on red. So for our last roll of the game, we again landed on red. So we'll grab our pink bag that has our cover or our title prompts in it and see what we get for our last roll of the game. All right, so we have a miscellaneous prompt, which is an author I've never read. Well, that's a fun prompt. There's definitely a lot of authors on my list that I haven't read, so let's take a look and see which one we're going to put on our TBR for our last physical book. So I found two books by authors I haven't read. The first is Throne of Glass by Sarah J. Maas. I have actually never read any of her books. And then the second is The City of Dusk by Tara Sim. They're both fantasy books. This book takes place in a land without magic where a woman has to fight for her survival, it sounds like. This is book one in her Throne of Glass series. And then this book takes place in the four realms, which are life, death, light, and darkness. And they all converge on the city of dusk. And the uh, four people, the four heirs to the divine powers, must come together to save their city. So those are kind of like the two options. It sounds like both quests. This book seems like it's a lot longer than this book. Let's check. 400 pages. And curious. 548, 540 pages. This is a lot bigger writing. So I think out of the two of them, I'm not really ready. I think that, well, they're both series. I don't know if this is a series. I'm not really ready to dive into a new series yet because I have a lot of series to finish. So I'm gonna go with the City of Dusk and hope it's not part of a series. It very well may be, as most fantasy books are. But we will always book one of the Dark Gods. Well, anyway, we're still gonna add this to our list, and we'll see if I get to it or if I end up reading the electronic book for this choice. All right, so let's choose our electronic book, and that will be our last pick for the month of December. So I am probably going to end up reading the electronic choice for this prompt, which is The Shadowland by Elizabeth Kostova. And the reason why is for my around the world reads I do each month for the month of December, it has to be a book that's set in Bulgaria, which this book happens to be. It's also by an author I have never read before, so it fits the prompt perfectly. But this book is about a young woman who travels to Sofia, Bulgaria, where she ends up helping an elderly couple into a taxi and realizes that they left one of their bags behind. And when she opens the bag, she realizes an urn that has a name on it, Stoyan Lazarov, and she needs to locate the family. And to do that, she has to kind of uncover the secrets of a talented musician who is shattered by oppression. So this book meets my criteria for my around the world read because it's set in Bulgaria. So I am going to choose this, and it'll probably be the book I end up reading. Though who knows, I may read both books from this prompt and give The City of Dusk a go. So that is our last book of the game. So that concludes our December TBR. Let me show you what books we got on here. It's kind of a heavy stack, but these are the books that we have, at least the physical books. Let me go through them real quick so we can kind of see where we are and what we'll be reading this month. We have the two fantasy novels, which have the magical creatures on the cover, which are Touched by Magic by Dorana Durgan and The Black Griffin by Mercedes Lackey and Larry Dixon, which is a book in the Voldemort series. For a book with 5 words in the title, we have our two mystery novels, which are The Hand on the Wall by Maureen Johnson and Lost Books and Old Bones by Paige Shelton. For our books that we had a long time on our TBR list, we have the fiction book Whitethorn Woods by Maeve Binchy and Red Rising by Pierce Brown, which is a science fiction slash dystopian type novel. For our books that are by debut author, we have the fantasy novel Gilded Cage by Vic James, and we have the historical fiction novel The Glass Blower by Petra Durst Dunning, or Benning rather. For our book by an author we haven't read before, we have The City of Dusk, which is by Tara Sim and is the first book in her series, which is fantasy. And we have The Shadowland by Elizabeth Kostova, which is a historical fiction novel. For a book that has a wintry setting to it, we have Whiteout by Danielle Gerard, which takes place in North Dakota. And we have The Bear and the Nightingale by Catherine Arden, which is a kind of retelling of a folklore of a Russian folklore that takes place in winter. This one is a thriller book. And last but not least, for a book that is kind of like a retelling of a folklore, we have Minder by Jay Cabay, which is a dark retelling of a fairy tale. And then we have A Curse So Dark and Lonely by Brigid Kemmerer, which is the retelling of Beauty and the Beast. So I think we have a good variety for this month. We got some mystery, some thrillers, some historical fiction, and then of course a bunch of fantasy. So I'm looking forward to reading these in December, and some of these choices are going to be hard. There's, some of the prompts I want to read both the electronic and the physical book, so we'll see which ones we choose. So if you like this video, please hit the like and subscribe button, especially if you want to see more videos by me. If you have any thoughts on this TBR, if you have any books that you're adding to your own TBR list, please, leave a comment below. Otherwise, in December I'll also be doing hopefully a readathon where I'll be reading a bunch of holiday romances, which is why we don't really have any romances on this TBR because I'm going to be doing a whole separate video just on recent holiday romances within the last year or so. So I'm looking forward to that. And then we'll have some yearly wrap up videos coming out as well. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you next time. Have a good rest of your day, night, evening, whatever time it is for you guys. I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching. Bye.